Used ones are now cheaper than many SUVs.
Which means it might be time to rethink the family car. We have talked a lot about how this car gets smaller the faster and harder you drive it.
The sensation here is that it's actually more capable than you think. I am now in the Audi A7. Interesting discussion point of these two cars is the fact that both of them are well over 50 grand normally, but they've existed long enough now you can find worthwhile options of these cars for under 50 grand. That's kind of shocking.
This is a 2012. It's got about almost 50,000 miles on it. This is an A6 chassis. It doesn't share anything with the Panamera, and yet they are so alike. Weight, engine power, size, they're so close but don't share really anything.
I didn't think until we got into both of them and started really researching both that they were that similar. And yet in spite of that, when you drive them both, they're remarkably different. Now the A7 is a step down from the A8. It doesn't have all of the luxury items that are available on the A8, but it gets awfully close. Of course, you get the hatchback usability instead of the cavernous A8 trunk, but I actually like this better than the A6 it's based on.
Audi did not invent the category of this fastback, sportback, four-door car. I kind of feel like Audi was a little late to the party with the A7, but man, did they get the proportions right.
Of these two, yes, the A7 is the better looking car. I don't know that that really is much of an accomplishment, but the A7 has figured out this same coupe-like back and actually made it look masculine, aggressive, and attractive.
You could argue that the front end looks like just about any other Audi. They kind of are interchangeable, but it's that rear end. I like that their smooth surfaces transition more into sharp corners. You can see this right at the rear three-quarter. There's that sharp definition, that shoulder line coming up, the body side, the rear taillights wrapping around. This is really the angle that defines the car. What I like best about that styling is the roofline, how quickly it accelerates. But you know, there's no headroom. When I got in the back, there's not the headroom that the Panamera has. So therefore, everything is a trade-off, right?
Interior-wise, it's an Audi. I mean, there's not a lot to strike against it. I like the beveled feel, the layered feel of these gauges. That's incredibly cool. And of course, gauges and interface, it's all Audi's great MMI, and that's one of the best.
However, it just seems a little bit Japanese in theme. Kind of like what Honda and Acura is doing, some sharp corners. The Panamera's interior is far better.
These seats, they're fine. They're really good mid-grade luxury seats. They're not amazing. They're not good for throwing it around a corner. There's actually a surprising amount of storage and real people room in the back of this car. The problem is the rear headroom, if you're over about 5'10", you're just not going to fit.
So in terms of power, see the 3.0T on the back of the car. It's kind of strange because you have to explain this every time. No, it's not a turbo, it's supercharged.
Because of that supercharger, there's a lot of power underfoot all the time. I mean, that naturally aspirated Panamera kind of has to build its way to the real power. This has it right off the line, and anytime you put your foot in it. Plus, it's mated to that 8-speed ZF transmission that's in just about every car with an 8-speed that's out there, which is a great transmission. There's a great sensation of thrust, just throwing this big sedan down the road. The other thing is that the Panamera, the actual pedals themselves, both the brake and especially the gas pedal, you got to really give it effort compared to this A7. This is really light underfoot. That combined with the supercharged engine makes this feel like it's flying. And in a leaving the stoplight or cruising quickly in 7th gear, it feels like it's got more to offer.
If power is your thing, this is the engine to get. If that's going to push you over the edge between the Panamera or the A7, get the A7. The power in this car is what you want. It's instantaneous. It's crisp. I mean, boost is boost, right? Now, I know I said in the Panamera I would take the V6, and I would, primarily for the dynamics, for the handling. Okay, I admit, I would like the punch of this car. It's got that torque, that mid-range punch. I also admit thinking, wow, 8 gears, does the world really need that? In this car, it's transformed the middle range, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and doing some more sweeping canyon driving like this. These are actually matched better to the engine output.
Because of that kind of magic carpet of thrust, you don't really notice what gear you're in anyway, whereas the Panamera involves you more in what gear is ideal for what you want to do. This isn't a light car. The A7 is about 4,200 pounds, which puts it within about 100 pounds of that Panamera. These are heavy 2-ton automobiles, so there's no way to get away from that weight, except with this supercharger, you kind of don't notice.
I can't hear the engine at all. I want to hear more from this car. It's almost too refined. I want some more character from this car. It seems like Audi is holding back on the sporting nature for what this car could be. I realize this is not the S7 or the RS7, but I feel like even on this base version, it could be a little bit more. It's funny just to get into both of these cars back to back and feel the differences in the handling, feel the way the car is set up. The wheelbases, the weight, all that stuff is so similar, and yet they do such different things.
Like all Audis, this has an automatic mode, it has a comfort mode, it has a dynamic mode, it has an individual mode where you can go into everything, the steering and the differentials and everything, you can customize it yourself. Even in the sporting dynamic mode of the A7, it doesn't ever feel as stiff and buttoned down as the Panamera does in sport mode. Now, the upside of that is this feels like a better long-distance cruiser or a commute car or I want to go on an Autobahn blast, I want to see how many countries I can go through. The A7 is pretty spectacular for that.
When you turn into a corner, things are precise. It's just, you're not getting a lot of feedback. There's some dead areas here, and I want the back end of the car to do more, to actually come around faster.
When we drive this with the Panamera back to back, you can tell when you start to push this car that the balance isn't nearly as good. There's a little bit of a sensation that understeer is coming. By contrast, the Panamera has that central sports car balance about it. This A7 feels much more like a traditional sedan, or you may want to say a traditional Audi. It's very controllable, but it definitely has body roll, and you move around in the seat, there's a sensation that there will be a place at which I'm going a little faster than I should be in this car. The Panamera just keeps asking for a little bit more.
I feel like it's fine in terms of hunkered down, holding the road, but there's this dead area. I can sort of wiggle the steering wheel through the corner. I'm not really feeling what the corner is doing, even though I can see what the car is doing.
Also, though both of these are all-wheel drive, the sensation from that is entirely different, especially coming out of corners. When you hammer out of a corner in the A7, you can feel those front wheels clawing for grip and pulling you out with the front half of the car. The Panamera never reveals that it's all-wheel drive. You put your foot in and it just kind of leaps forward, but you can't really tell where the thrust is coming from. It certainly doesn't feel like it's coming from the front half of the car. I doubt very much that most people will ever drive an A7 and feel like it doesn't handle well enough. It carries its 2-ton bulk superbly. It's just whereas the Panamera is one of those cars that as you drive it hard, it starts to feel a little smaller and it starts to recommend, hey, you could take me to the track. The A7 is what you think it is. It's a large sedan.
I feel like the Panamera is going to be far sportier through corners, far dynamically better. But this does just fine. This is holding its own just fine. I can definitely see this more as a 4-door GT car, if you know what I mean. The Audi sort of puts everything out on the table. It lays all its cards out on the table. This car is what it is. I wish it were lurking. I wish there were something more. The A7 feels like an overgrown Golf. It's just so simple and easy to drive. You barely have to pay attention.
The interesting thing about this A7 in particular is the owner is exactly what we're talking about. He had wanted an A7, couldn't afford a new one, and now that they've come down below 50 grand, they've reached his price point. So the A7 for him became an aspirational car, and as soon as it dropped below 50 grand, he and his family now have one. He's got a young son, they're a growing family, and they love this car.
If I bought an A7, I would be comforted knowing that I paid far less and still got most of the goodness that we look for and enjoy in the Panamera. I'd be okay with that. So, yeah, I could go for an A7. Really could.
While both of these cars have come down a lot and you can get a really good used deal on them, the A7 is still the better deal. I mean, it's running 10 to 15 grand less than the equivalent Panamera. You really can find a much better deal on an A7 than you can the Porsche. The Porsche is that much more kind of laser focused on being a performance car, but if you want a really nice luxury family sedan, you're hard pressed to beat the A7, especially at the cost.
So here's the thing you have to know. When I first started talking about doing this shoot, I said, Paul, I really want a winter shoot. I did not want 15 degrees, which is what we
cold.
have today. This is unbelievable. Hey, nice hat, by the way.
Hey, thanks. It's really cold. Did
oh,
I
wow.
mention that?
Okay.
You got your winter shoot.
Yeah, but that hat. Okay, anyway, here's the thing.
My hat.
A7 and Panamera, these are expensive cars new, especially the Panamera. I mean,
man.
you're hard to get one for under 100 grand.
Oh,
but
man,
these
yeah, I
things,
agree.
once you trick them out, they're 80 at least. You know, once you really get one that has all the options and you really like it, it's 80 grand. But the reason we put these together, again, it's not because they're new, it's not because they're the latest and greatest thing.
Right.
It's because really, $50,000, you can own these cars now. That is a shocking deal.
We've driven the Panamera quite a bit. In Turbo and GTS, we've driven the V8,
Yeah.
we've now driven the V6. Finally, we've put it on camera to really say they're affordable now. I love Porsche. I like the styling,
Yeah.
but the
I know you
A7 does it beats it. And here I used to own an Audi and a Porsche together, so
Yes,
I kind of feel like
yes, you are.
I kind of feel like I got both going on.
This is
here.
quite a shoot for you, in
But
spite of the cold,
Audi,
yes.
I'm really very pleased. We've been wondering about this car as well.
Well, the A7 is actually an amazing deal. It really is a car you can get for a shockingly low amount of money. As we've said, of course, if you buy a luxury sedan that has now dropped this far, keep in mind maintenance will still be as if it were a $100,000 car.
Oh, sure.
But A7 or Panamera for under 60 grand, which one do you want?
I would far prefer this car just in terms of style alone.
Yeah, I hear that.
But it's so similar. Weight.
Engine power, all those things are so similar, and they're such different cars.
They have such different dynamics. And here's the thing, if you're not a person that ever does hard driving, lots of back roads, the track, anything like this, there's really nothing about the A7 that it can't accomplish for you, and it's more attractive than the Panamera. I do have to go there. But here's the thing, if you are a guy that drives like I do, you want to be on a back road, you want to drive a car hard, the Panamera is better for dynamics. I actually prefer the interior, I just wish it looked better. I have to go Panamera kind of against my better judgment, but this is also, honestly, still 10 grand cheaper.
I mean, I'm an Audi guy too, and I don't know that we have to pick a winner here because now just you've got to know that you can afford either.
Which is so great.
Yes, that's true. You can't afford either. I'm still going with the ugly girl. But hey, affordable luxury sedan.